I go back to my early days in the Park Service when I would take my journals out and I would sit down with two things, one in my hand and one in my head. The one in my hand would be the journals. And I would sit in these earth lodges that Lewis and Clark, I'm sure, would have either walked by or walked through or sat in and visited the people. And I would sit there and I would read these journals and I would try to put myself back in that time period. And at the same time, by reading them, I also had things in my head that was told by my elders. And so I could sit there and I can hear some of the songs maybe they'd be singing in those old days, and the dogs barking, and then the things happening. Maybe somebody mourning a loved one who had gotten killed or died somehow. So you got crying over here. And that village was a village, folks. That village was a village. It was alive. It was people. It was activities. It was good. There was bad. There was all these different things happening. And as I would go along the Lewis and Clark Trail following them, I would keep track of that. I got the opportunity to really work on Lewis and Clark in the late 90s with this bicentennial. In fact, my job was to put something together that we could follow the Lewis and Clark Trail from the National Park Service, and this is what we did. We, being a lot of us, put this together. And I'll tell one story about that because it was really interesting, and I hope we still got that philosophy going, which I'm sure we do. We have some outstanding rangers here. We have outstanding leadership. So yeah, that's very good. And some of them at one time, where's that little guy that introduced me? Some of them at one time even had hair, but nowadays they don't have hair. So you can see that guy take his. So things have changed since then, you know. But one of the things when I first got talked about this and a long time ago, they asked me a question. Our contractors came and asked me a question, and they said, "What do you want visitors to leave with when they visit your project?" And boy, that took me a long time. I started thinking of everything I could think of. Well, the first thing we want to do is we want to talk about the tribes and way before the coming of the white man and what was going on there and on and on and on. Then we talk about Hudson Bay Company. Then we talk about American Fur Company. Then we talk about Lewis and Clark. We talk about Bodmer, Catlin, on and on and on and on. It was overwhelming. What I needed was an opportunity like this, a system like this, but it would cover at least 10 acres. Okay, it would take 15 semis to pull up and down the river. And all these things. So when you go away from that, oh man, I know. Then I got thinking about that. They gave me 4 days or 5 days to think about this. And it occurred on a Thursday morning. I remember that because I had a Friday morning meeting with the contractors. And the Friday morning meeting, I was supposed to come there and I was supposed to present, okay, this is what I want the visitors to leave with when they come and visit our exhibit about Lewis, our mobile exhibit about Lewis and Clark. It hit me about 3 o'clock in the morning. I think it was more like 3:30. And it was one of the times I actually wrote something down. It actually made sense when I woke up. And it was simple. What I want the visitors to leave with when they after I visit our exhibits is more questions than answers. To me, that makes sense. Because if you leave with more questions than answers, I'm hoping that your appetite for history, your appetite for culture, and your appetite for knowledge of this will stay with you and will go down to your children and to your relatives, and you'll get excited about Lewis and Clark. Because Lewis and Clark is not about the Lewis and Clark story. This Lewis and Clark is about the American Indian story. This Lewis and Clark is about that story that's never been told. This Lewis and Clark story is about those people who are still living today, that their ancestors were touched by Lewis and Clark. We're touched by York. We're touched by Sagagwea. We're touched by those clans and societies that Lewis and Clark saw as they came all the way from Monticello all the way to Oregon. That's what this story is about. And so we got thinking about that. And I started thinking about the legacies of this. And to understand the legacy of Lewis and Clark, you have to understand, I'm not going to be here the whole time and tell about the complete philosophy, because that's impossible for me to do. But I will talk about this. To understand the Lewis and Clark story is to understand the plight of the American Indians. From the East Coast to the Great Plains, to the mountains, to the Pacific Northwest. It's to understand that plight. And that plight started a long time ago.